Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis, and welcome to another week of Living the Wiccan Life. This week we bring you more interviews from PantheaCon in San Jose, California, beginning with our interview with Ellen Dugan, author of many books, including her newest, How to Enchant a Man. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis, and we're here at PantheaCon with Ellen Dugan, the very well-known author of 10 books?
9 in print, 10 next year.
Very good. And your most recent book is How to Enchant a Man.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to say a little bit about that book?
How to Enchant a Man was, the idea was pitched to me. They sent out a main email to all the writers at LWL and said, here's a list of books we'd like to see in print. And that one caught my attention. And at first I took it because I thought it would be easy to write and fun. And then once I got into the topic, I realized there was so much more than just, I thought, okay, we'll get into lingerie, we'll do a little girl power, blah, blah, boom, we're all good. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized, no, there's a lot more here. I've got to start talking about empowerment. I need to talk about ethics and the rules right off the bat, because the chances of somebody picking this up because they like the title but not having a clue about magic, in good conscience, I just couldn't, throw a bunch of saucy spells in there and then turn them loose with no idea of, of the consequences or how magic worked. So it ended up being a much more involved book than I thought it would be. It was still a lot of fun to write. I got to let my sense of humor rip, which is somewhat snarky. It got to be a lot of fun, but it covered a lot more than I originally expected. So what I thought would just be a cute, kind of fun book ended up being a lot deeper, much to my surprise.
That sounds very interesting. Would you like to talk a little bit more about some of your other books that people might have read?
My first book was Garden Witchery, and that was written because when I first decided to write, I was always aggravated because I would go to the bookstore and I never found anything I wanted to read. There was encyclopedias on herbs, there was maybe a vague book on herb magic or two, but it was like a tease. They would say, oh, yarrow keeps a couple together for 7 years. Its elemental correspondence is Venus. And that was it. And I would always be going, well, can I grow that in my garden? What can I do with it? Give me something else. And I thought, why doesn't anybody write? Why doesn't anybody give me more? There has to be more. Well, how do you plant it? How do you grow it? What if you want to make a garden? Why can't there be more? And I finally got aggravated one day and thought, you know what? I'll write the damn book. So I sat down and basically taught myself to write a book. And I had just gotten my first article contracted with the Magical Almanac for the year 2000 from Llewellyn, and the first article I wrote was called A Witch's Garden. So that got the ball rolling, and that kind of got me bit by the writing bug. And once you're bit by the writing bug, as you know, you're kind of terminal. And that one was a lot of fun to do. And then a couple years later, I decided to do a not so much a sequel, but a companion piece. And that one was called Cottage Witchery, and that's natural magic for hearth and home, because I got really interesting letters from people saying, oh, I love the garden book, but I don't really garden so much. I'm more of a homebody. Can you focus on the home? And it seemed like a lot of fun to me, so I dove into that book. And then last year, another companion book came out, and that one's called Natural Witchery, and that's on intuitive magic and the personal and practical side of magic, because for me personally, since I have no formal training and I'm self-taught, I thought it was important to get past a lot of this problem that people have, especially in the Midwest, because if you go, and you learn, when you go to the East Coast, people are like, oh dear, where are you from? And you say, oh, Missouri, and they look at you and go, sorry. I mean, everybody gets they're like, oh, you poor thing, you're out there in that desert. I'm like, no, it's not a spiritual desert. But there's no real established traditions in my part of the country. There was no access to anything, and if you wanted to learn, you took classes where you could find them, and you taught yourself. And I met so many people over the years when I first started traveling and touring with the books that had similar problems. They didn't have access to a priestess, or if there was a group, they were kind of flaky, or there was local politics they wouldn't dive into, and they were like, well, I kind of think of myself as a natural witch. Is that a bad thing to say? I read online that you can't call yourself that. And I thought, maybe I need to address this. So when I started thinking about that, I decided to tackle it from the way I first got into the craft, which was exploring psychic abilities and intuition, because to be honest, the most powerful witches I've ever met in my life are usually very talented psychics. And since everybody has some type of psychic ability, why not explore it? Why not tap into that? Why not look at it from this angle and see how you can incorporate all these things together? Because if you can do that, you can crank up the volume on your magic to a full blast, and everybody's always so shocked at how much better their magic is, how much stronger it is, and how well things work. So I looked at the three main types of psychic abilities, the ability to see, clairvoyance, an intuitive, and an empath, and then took a look at how they applied to magic, how those magical personalities worked in a circle with groups of other people, how you could work it with yourself, and then how you could fine-tune your own abilities and apply it to your craft and get better results. And then I also want to talk about the practical on the personal side of magic as well. So there's a chapter in there on witchery at work and dealing with teenage children, because, God, they're so much fun when you're practicing witch. And I wanted to kind of wind it all together and make it so people could learn and understand, because a lot of people have this very incorrect assumption that I, live in the Addams Family mansion somewhere, and I live in the burbs in the Midwest and raise my kids. And but I thought it was important for people to understand that, I deal with the same things you do: a job, a husband, kids, teenagers who think it's cool one day and who hate your guts the next because they think you're ruining their life. And I thought it was important to talk about all that, but to find a way to put the focus internally this time, instead of the garden, the house. This time it was all focused within, and then how to take that and to expand the craft that you have.
Now, the next book that you have coming, that isn't here yet.
No.
Would you like to say a few words about that?
I just shipped it out about a week ago. And the working title is called A Garden Witch's Herbal. I don't know what the final title will be. Llewellyn will have to say over that. They usually leave my titles alone, so it should be something along those lines. But the book is on green witchery, herbalism, and magic again. But I thought it would be interesting, since I started with garden witchery, to take another look at herbal magic from a different perspective and look at things that most people don't talk about, like herbs and plants of the West and the Southwest, how to grow plants if you live in the city, how to design a garden and give it impact and give it atmosphere, and to make a real theme with your garden instead of just, okay, I've got plants, so how can I make it into a theme? How can I get atmosphere going? There's chapters on trees, there's chapters on... I did a whole chapter on poisonous plants, and that was a lot of fun. Of course, by the time I got done, I felt like I should be sitting out in my office going, whoa. But, I now know many ways to poison people, but I thought it was important because everybody goes, ooh, the classic witch herbs, ooh, and it's all scary. But how do you grow them? What do they look like? And what do they do? And why are they poisonous? So I thought, okay, let's look at it, and let's put the information down. Let's give good information so people understand. This is what they do, this is what they look like, this is what they were used for, and this is what happens if you screw around with them and use them incorrectly. In my opinion, the topic of gothic plants or forbidden plants or poisonous plants is not anything to be messed with by a dabbler or a novice. But the information needs to be out there, because people have visions of, that they've got a cabinet full of, belladonna and nightshade, or, wolfsbane or aconite, which is the same thing, and nobody knows what the names are. Some names have the same thing. There's two different kinds of mandrakes that have completely different botanical names, but people don't have any information. They just think they should have it because they're a witch, and that's just silly. We needed to get good information on the poisonous plants, what they did, and why they were poisonous, so people could understand more about it. So they would have the information, because in theory it sounds really cool to have belladonna in your herb cabinet. And in reality, not so much. You need to know what it does, and a lot of plants look very similar. Like, as a master gardener, one of the funniest things, especially living in Missouri, and you live in Illinois, there is a plant that looks just like hemlock, and it's called Queen Anne's lace, and nobody knows how to tell it apart. Once you know, it's very simple, but I know so many gardeners who dig up what they think is wild Queen Anne's lace and plant it in their garden, and they have hemlock growing. Now, Queen Anne's lace has hairy, fuzzy stems, and hemlock is smooth, little purple or red, like splotches or streaks. And hemlock, if you crush the leaves, it stinks. It's described as mouse-like or rank. It just stinks. Queen Anne's lace is a wild carrot, and they usually have the little purple flower in the middle, but not always. But hemlock never has the purple flower in the middle, but they look extremely similar, but people don't know how to tell them apart. So, for example, in that poisonous plants chapter, I list, this is how it grows, this is how tall it gets, this is what the foliage looks like, these are the flowers, this is where you're going to find it. So people would have information, because while people love the idea of, ooh, I've got the classic stuff, they don't know what it's for. They don't know what its astrological or magical associations are. And that's just silly. If we're going to look at the topic, let's look at it. Let's look at it from a smart point of view, and then let's just explore it.
It's important for safety to know these things. Your work is very practical, and deals with how to do things.
Yeah.
And of the different authors I've had occasion to meet, you
I probably talk the fastest.
Well, yes, but that wasn't what I was going to say. You have a great deal of practical information for young authors. And I was wondering if you would care to say something to people who may be watching who would be interested in becoming authors.
Okay, number one, write the book. Nobody's going to give you $1 million for your idea. Everybody's got an idea. If you put 10 pagans in a room, 9 of them are writing a book. So be smart. Research your industry. Know what's out there. Know your market. Know what's hot. Know what's selling. Know what's not selling. And then bottom line, what do you have that makes your book unique? What is it about your idea or the thing you want to do that's going to make people go, ooh. Basically, if you're looking at the bookstore going, you know, there's a book I've always wanted. Why doesn't anybody write it? That might be your first place to start, but it's got to be unique. It has to be something for you. Nobody wants to read another autobiographical story about how, you know, somebody's maiden aunt who was 95 taught them the magic under the dark of the moon, and it's a secret. No, nobody wants to hear that. They want to know about practical stuff. They want to know about real life. They want to understand how to incorporate it, and they want to learn. But if you want to write a book on paganism or Wicca or witchcraft, then you have to find what makes your book different, what makes it unique, what makes it special. And if you can do that, then you've got a good chance of getting it published. But write the entire book, you know, spell check the hell out of it. Make it as professional as you can. Research your publishing companies, get their writer's guidelines, follow them to the letter, and mail it in. If I had $1 for every time I met somebody who said, oh yeah, I'm an author, I'm like, fabulous, what'd you write? I'll go find it at the bookstore. Where is it? What can I get it? And they're like, oh, no, I'm not published. I haven't mailed it in. Oh, how long have you been writing? About 10 years. No. Mail it in. The first time I mailed off Garden Witchery, I made my husband drive me to the post office because I was such a nervous wreck, and I cried the whole way home because I was so scared that I mailed it in. But 6 months later, it was contracted, and I just mailed it in cold. I didn't know I was sending it, I just sent it in. So, I mean, it can happen, but you've got to write the book. They're not going to give you money for an idea. And the other thing people need to know is you are not going to become rich being published in the nonfiction, Wicca, New Age, pagan market. You probably will make about what you would make in a nice part-time job. So don't quit your day job. If you have a spouse who has insurance, treat them very well. Worship the ground they walk on so you can pursue this. But I mean, just get out there and pursue it. If you really want to do it, there won't be any stopping you, but you have to believe in yourself. But the most important thing is to write it and send it in. Everybody clutches when it comes to sending it in. Send it in.
Now, you go to the St. Louis Pagan Picnic every year, I believe.
I have been for the last 2-3 years.
And you will be this year?
Yes.
And so people can come and see you there.
Yeah.
But if people don't happen to be near there, where can they see you?
I teach classes in St. Louis County, in South St. Louis, at a metaphysical store called Pathways. And that's like 270 South, Tesson-Berry. It's in that neck of the woods. I'll be starting another series of classes in March. They'll run for 4 weeks, and it's called Wicca Beyond the Basics, and that'll cover the Alpha State, the 7 Hermetic Laws, which very few people besides like Laurie Cabot or Christopher Penzac, and Christopher was taught by Laurie, ever get into in magical books. I don't know if your books cover that or not. I haven't seen them yet. Give me a copy.
Right.
Shameless. But I wanted to get into that. Damn it. But I wanted to get into that because it's what magic is based on. But most people are like, the 7 who? Nobody knows what all the rules are based on. And it's going to be on gray magics and on a really common sense, practical look on ethics. Because, you know, if you want to piss off a bunch of pagans and Wiccans, just toss ethics into the conversation and watch everybody go insane. But it's important for people to want to get beyond the A is for Athame stage, you know, East, you know, air, yellow. If they want to get past that, then they need to look at the foundations of the craft and what all the stepping stones are and things like the Alpha State and how you use it and why you use it and the 7 Hermetic Laws and gray magics. That kind of thing ups it a little bit and gives people more to work with, because at the end of the day, as a good teacher, as you know, your whole job is to make people go, I gotta look into more of that. That's yes. The whole point. So a good teacher inspires, hopefully entertains, and makes them laugh, but also gets people to get off their butt and go research more, because teachers aren't gurus. We just give you the information and we inspire you to go and to research more.
If people want to learn more about you, do you have a website?
I do. It's a rather long address, but it's
right.
www.geocities/eDugan_Garden
And that will appear at the bottom of your screen in small letters.
Or you can find me on MySpace. I have a MySpace page. Just look up Ellen Dugan on MySpace. You'll find me there.
Thank you very much for taking time for this interview, and we really appreciate it.
Good, thank you.
And we'll see you in St. Louis.
Okay.
I hope that you enjoyed our interview with Ellen and that you'll join us again for part 2 of this episode when we interview Kirk White, founder of Cherry Hill Seminary.